I had two major problems with John Wick 4.
Oh.
I was one of the very last people to see this in theaters. Me and my friend had made a pact that we would see it together in the theaters when our schedules coordinated. And 60 days after its release, we saw it in a 10:15 p.m. showing on a standard screen.
For the end of the night.
During this showing, a man 3 seats to my left, who was one of only 5 other people in the theater, fell asleep about 15 minutes into the movie and proceeded to snore through the entire thing. Was not woken up by any of the gunfire or explosions, and then he randomly woke up with 10 minutes left in the movie and left without seeing the ending. I have some opinions on him too, but let's jump into John Wick 4. Major spoilers ahead. There were two big reasons that I didn't enjoy this movie as much as I did the first 3 in the trilogy, but before I talk about those, I want to talk about the things that I did enjoy about John Wick 4. If you're just here for the negativity, please feel free to jump ahead with the timestamps in the description. When you come into a John Wick movie, you want exciting action, fantastical set pieces, awesome choreographed fights, and we got all of that in this movie, and it was great. I also really enjoyed most of the new characters that were introduced. Kane was great as the sympathetic bad guy bound to the table. Shimatsu and his daughter Akira were super cool running the Osaka Continental. And the Tracker was a fun and worthy adversary. I didn't love that he had a super dog that felt like a retread of Sophia's dogs in John Wick 3, but that's a nitpick. Marquise was a bit underwhelming as the snotty big bad, but overall the new characters were pretty cool. So with the action, the characters, the visuals, I certainly enjoyed the flick. But it left a bad taste in my mouth that the other 3 didn't, and here's why. Last warning on spoilers. Number 1, it didn't deliver on the promise of the previous film, and John Wick's motivations weren't really clear. That's technically 2, but we're counting it as the same one because they tie together. The original John Wick was excellent as a standalone movie. He's out of the life, they kill his dog, he gets revenge on everyone.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
You went into it expecting a revenge flick, and you got exactly that. The sequel didn't need to be made, but it felt like a natural progression for the story. We learned more about the underground world of assassins, including markers. John's motivations were once again clear, as he had to honor his marker and then get revenge on Santino.
What have you done? Finished it.
But that revenge came on continental grounds, and so now John Wick is excommunicado, and we head into Wick 3 wondering how the hell he's going to get out of this predicament. And Wick 3 picks up right where we left off. He's on the run and he has no access to the Continental. He's in survival mode, and then we learn that he wants to stay alive by any means necessary so that he can keep the memory of his wife alive. Winston makes him realize that serving the table isn't really living, and so he turns against them and joins Winston to defend the Continental. Winston double-crosses him in the end, and John Wick 3 ends with Wick barely clinging on to life, and the Bowery King surprisingly still alive.
Johnny.
And they both want revenge on the high table. So what did we all expect from this movie? That the Bowery King would help John heal up, and together they would take on the high table. And things start off perfectly. We see John training to get back up to speed, and then we jump cut to him hunting the Elder out in the desert. And then it's not the same Elder. And then we jump cut to Winston, and the New York Continental is destroyed, and Sharon is killed. And then there's a bounty on Wick's head again. And that's kind of it. Next time we see Wick, he's hiding in Japan. And the rest of the movie, he's fighting for his survival until Winston reveals that there's a way out, and suddenly John's motivation changes and he wants to duel for his freedom? Wasn't his motive to take out the high table? Now he just wants his freedom again? Weren't he and the Bowery King pissed?
I am really pissed off.
And then the Bowery King shows up in Paris for reasons I can't follow. If Wick wins this duel, he gets his freedom and Winston gets his hotel back. What does the Bowery King get? Didn't he want to take out the high table with John?
Pissed off.
How would John killing Kane, or even Marquise, help the Bowery King in any way? Now, I know the stories in these movies don't always make sense, and I can sort of appreciate that they explain to us in this movie that taking out the high table is impossible. But wouldn't that have been more impactful if there was actually a plan in place, or if there was some progress being made? Imagine if the movie started with Wick and the Bowery King strategizing. All of the High Table's members, strengths and weaknesses, who they could get to. Think about John Wick with a Kill Bill style list. Then after he's pulled off the impossible and taken out a member or two, they're quickly replaced, and he and the Bowery King are forced to come to terms with the fact that their efforts are futile. At least in that scenario, we'd have gotten something closer to what the end of John Wick 3 suggested this movie would be. And even then, even if destroying the high table was impossible, wasn't John's motivation to take out as many as he could at least? To do all the damage he could with the life he had left? Why did he suddenly do a 180 and want a way out? It seems like the peaceful life out of the business idea was sort of thrown away when you started a war with the high table by killing the Elder. So it just made no sense, even by the John Wick universe's nonsensical standards. I don't understand how he went from the Bowery King's declaration that he was
pissed off,
and that Wick was pissed too.
You pissed, John? Are you? Yeah.
To everybody being happy with just taking out this one guy, even though this one guy didn't even have anything to do with the actions of the first 3 movies. I left the theater annoyed about that, and also about my second major complaint. Number 2, the ending sucked. Putting aside everything I just said about the wonkiness of the revenge scheme and the sudden 180 towards wanting freedom, I still might have left the theater happy if the ending wasn't so bad. And the reason it was such a letdown was because they just didn't commit. It makes sense from a financial and creative perspective. Director Chad Stahelski has mentioned that he and Keanu Reeves are taking a little break for now. They wanted to see how this movie did and then eventually sit down and talk about potential ideas for a John Wick 5. So they might leave the series where it is now, or they might do a 5th movie if they feel like there's an idea that warrants it. So since they weren't sure, they gave Wick a vague off-screen death. If that was the last film, it works as an ending, and if they decide to do another one, it's easy enough to say that he faked his death to avoid detection from the high table or whatever. But that lack of commitment just completely killed the end of this movie. Either option would have been fine with me. If Wick decided that his only true escape from all this was death to stop hurting people around him, then it would make sense that he would sacrifice himself to let Kane live on with his daughter and to be happy with one bit of final revenge by killing Marquise. If he wants to live on to continue to keep the memory of his wife alive, then it makes sense that he would fake his death and ride off into the sunset, presumably to enjoy his happily ever after. Yes, he went limp on the stairs, but we've seen John Wick survive the most insane stunts and falls for 4 straight movies. It's hard to believe a gut shot would kill him. Actually showing us that he was dead, whether it was with an open casket or Winston checking his pulse or whatever, would have allowed the audience to accept this as a reality and to tip our cap to the legend. Instead, we were just left confused. Wait, is he really dead? And not in a fun, open-ended way, but more in a frustrated and confused way. Think about how great the endings to the first 3 movies were. John and his new dog walking away from the carnage after he completed his revenge. John on the run and excommunicado with seemingly no way out. John and the Bowery King agreeing to join forces against the High Table.
Pissed off.
All 3 were extremely satisfying. This time, at least for me, it was just a dud. I would have been fine with him finally leaving this fight behind to enjoy his freedom, or I would have been fine with him dying a hero's death in sacrifice to let Kane live on. Getting neither of those things just left me feeling disappointed. And now I don't even really know if I want a Wick 5. If there is one, I'll happily go see it, and I'm sure I'll enjoy the action again. But now that we know the High Table is invincible and there's not really much of a story to tell anymore, I'm not as excited about continuing this story as I was with the previous sequels.
Oh.
In any case, this series of movies has been a blast and I've enjoyed all of them. I just wish we could have had a better chapter in this one.
Yeah.
What do you all think? Let me know if you agree or disagree with my points and if you're still looking forward to a potential 5th movie in this series in the comments below. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Please subscribe above or check me out on any of these social links to the side, and I'll see you soon.